They say heartbreak changes you, and they're right. My name is Ava Thompson, and this is the story of how the man I loved left me for someone better, richer, and more sophisticated, and how that decision turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. At the time, I was 26, working 2 jobs in Los Angeles just to make ends meet. One as a barista in Westwood, and the other at a local art studio where I was trying to build a name for myself as a painter. Life wasn't glamorous. I was exhausted. But I was full of dreams, and in my heart, I believed Brandon and I were in it together. Brandon Miller, tall, confident, with that charming fake laugh that worked on everyone. We'd been dating for 2 years. He was working a decent job in digital marketing, but always chasing some fantasy of wealth, power, and status. He wanted the high-rise life, champagne brunches, private jets, and I, apparently, didn't fit into that version of success. It started subtly. He'd scoff at my canvases, say they looked too homemade. He'd suggest I apply for real jobs instead of wasting time on artsy stuff. And whenever I brought up my plans for my own gallery someday, he'd laugh, not cruelly, but dismissively, like I was a child with a hobby. Then came Sienna Clark. She walked into our lives like a thunderstorm in designer heels. The daughter of some tech mogul, she had a 6-figure wardrobe, a condo in Beverly Hills, and an Instagram that screamed money and privilege. Brandon met her at a networking event. Within 2 weeks, he was distant. Within a month, he was gone. No explanation. Just a text. You deserve someone who appreciates your lifestyle. I need more. I still remember standing in my tiny kitchen, staring at the screen, trying to breathe. My body shook, but no tears came. Just a silence that screamed louder than any heartbreak ever had. The next week, I saw their photos on social media, brunches in Malibu, pool parties in Palm Springs, laughing together like I'd never existed. And in that moment, something inside me flipped. Not rage, not jealousy, determination. If I wasn't good enough for his world, I would build a new one. One that didn't need validation from men like Brandon or money like Sienna's. One where I owned my worth. That's the day I decided to bet on myself. And the woman I became was someone they never saw coming. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. After all, who was I to think that his eyes had already started drifting? That the way he scrolled his phone too quickly, hit his screen when I walked in, or changed our weekend plans last minute? All of that could mean what my gut whispered at night. Right? Still, something about the way Liam had begun behaving around me felt different, hollow, like a ghost of the man I used to know. He was still there, physically present. His laugh still echoed in the apartment. But his warmth had changed. It had cooled. Like he was distracted by a future that didn't include me in it. One morning, while making breakfast, I noticed he didn't take his usual seat at the counter. He sat by the window instead, scrolling, texting, and smiling faintly to himself. I watched the light catch the side of his face. He looked younger somehow, more excited than he had in months. "Who are you texting?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. He blinked, looked up, and for the briefest second, guilt flickered in his eyes. Then he smiled, that smooth, disarming grin he always used when he didn't want me to know what he was thinking. "Oh, just Dan from the office," he said. "We're prepping for the client review on Monday." I nodded, but the explanation didn't sit right. I knew Dan. Dan didn't use emojis. And the little yellow heart I'd seen on Liam's screen wasn't from any corporate guy exchanging work updates. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't ready to fight a war I didn't have evidence for. Not yet. Over the next few days, the signs multiplied. Liam started coming home late, claiming networking events, impromptu client drinks, or emergency work calls. He never used to go anywhere without telling me every detail. Suddenly, he was vague, distant. When I asked how his day went, he'd give me half sentences like, "Busy, you know how it is." Gone were the little stories, the inside jokes, the way we used to laugh over the dumbest things while eating takeout on the floor. The man who used to dance with me in the kitchen now barely touched me. His kisses felt obligatory, his hugs like a fading routine. I try to tell myself it was just a rough patch. That all relationships go through dull phases. But every time he smiled at his phone or locked it when I walked in, my chest would tighten with suspicion. One night, I was folding laundry when I noticed a receipt sticking out from his jeans pocket. I pulled it out and flattened it. La Belle Maison, dinner for two. It wasn't just the name of the restaurant that made my stomach lurch, it was the time. 8:45 p.m. Last Wednesday. The same night he told me he had to work late on a financial model and crashed at his colleague's place. There was no way this was business. That night, I lay awake in bed long after Liam started snoring beside me. I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, wondering how long it had been going on. Had he fallen in love with someone else? Or was I simply no longer enough? The next morning, I watched him get dressed with meticulous care. More than usual. Crisp shirt. Subtle cologne. A fresh shave. "You're dressing up for a spreadsheet meeting?" I asked, feigning amusement. He chuckled. "Client pitch. First impressions matter." But I knew he was lying. I smiled back, playing the part. But inside, I was unraveling. I didn't cry. Not yet. I needed clarity before I'd let myself fall apart. I started checking little things. His calendar entries. The call logs on our shared iPad. The odd purchases showing up on our bank statements, scented candles, designer bags, an Uber to an unfamiliar hotel. I wasn't the type to snoop. But when a relationship starts to feel like a lie, even honesty begins to look like naivety. One afternoon, I ran into his coworker, Jen, at a local coffee shop. She looked surprised to see me. "I didn't know you were back from Miami," she said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, confused. "Liam said you'd gone on a girls' trip for a few days." "Wait, haven't you been home?" I smiled tightly, heart thudding. "Oh, yeah, must have been some mix-up." Jen looked puzzled, but didn't push. We exchanged pleasantries and parted ways. When I got home, I stood in front of the mirror and stared at myself for a long time. The woman in the reflection looked lost, not in the dramatic, sobbing kind of way, but in that dull, quiet way you feel when someone starts phasing you out of their life like a ghost. And the worst part? I still loved him. The psychological toll began to wear me down. Every sound of a message ping sent my heart racing. Every time he left the room to take a call, I found myself straining to hear. I checked the bathroom mirror after he showered, wondering if he was scrubbing himself clean from guilt or from someone else's perfume. One Saturday night, I finally cracked. He was laughing at his phone again, that same stupid grin, when I asked, too casually, "Do you still love me, Liam?" He looked up, startled. "What kind of question is that?" I shrugged. "Just wondering." He walked over, wrapped his arms around me. "Of course I love you." But it didn't sound like love. It sounded like habit. I decided to stop guessing. I needed to know. The next time he said he was going to a work dinner, I followed him. Not like a detective in a movie. I didn't wear a trench coat or carry binoculars. I just waited 10 minutes after he left, slipped into my car, and trailed him from a distance. He drove into the upscale district and parked near the Avalon, a boutique restaurant known for its overpriced wines and mood lighting. I watched him get out of the car, buttoning his blazer, checking his reflection in the window, and then I saw her. Tall, blonde, elegant. The kind of woman who wore confidence like silk. They kissed on the cheek. Then he held the door open for her. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Not out of spite, but because something inside me finally settled. The ambiguity was over. The emotional gaslighting I'd done to myself, convincing myself I was just insecure, it ended in that moment. He had made his choice, and I was about to make mine. The moment I walked into that art gala, invited not as a guest, but as the featured artist, was when everything began to unravel. My hands were steady as I clasped my clutch, but inside me, a tempest was raging. I had spent the past few years healing, building, and transforming my life into something I never thought possible. But tonight was the night the past would collide with the present. And sure enough, there he was. Logan, standing next to her. He hadn't changed much, still tall, effortlessly charming, and dressed in a designer suit. but the years had etched a certain hardness into his features. There was less life in his eyes than I remembered. His smile looked forced. And the woman by his side, Sabrina, looked like she had stepped out of a fashion spread, elegant and icy, every bit the fantasy he had chosen over me. They hadn't seen me yet, and I almost turned away, a reflex born from muscle memory of trying not to be seen, not to take up space, not to compete with the woman who had everything I was told I lacked. But I didn't turn away this time, because this time I was not the same girl he walked out on. The gallery owner approached and greeted me with a warm smile. "Everyone's talking about your collection. That piece you donated to the museum auction last year. It skyrocketed your name. People are saying you're the next major voice in abstract expressionism." I nodded, my heart thudding. "Thank you. That means a lot." I turned to walk toward the sculpture room when I heard his voice. "Amelia?" I stopped. Slowly, I turned. Logan's eyes widened as they scanned my face, then my outfit. Tailored, sleek, powerful. I had chosen red for a reason. I wanted him to remember the woman he left, and to realize he never really knew her. "Wow," he said, stepping closer. I didn't know you were here. Or that you were." He gestured vaguely at the room around us. Sabrina looked at me, puzzled. "Logan, who is this?" His mouth opened, then closed. For a brief second, I saw confusion and something else. Guilt? "She's someone I used to know," he said finally. "Used to know. That's what I was now." I smiled. "We dated for 5 years," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Until he left me for someone with a private yacht and generational wealth." "You must be Sabrina." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, I am." There was an awkward silence. Logan cleared his throat. "So, you're doing art now?" "Always have been," I replied. "It's just now the world's paying attention." I saw it then, that flicker in his expression. Recognition. Regret. The realization that the version of me he abandoned had evolved into someone unrecognizable. Someone powerful. "I'm glad you made it," I added, glancing at the piece titled Resurrected, an abstract depiction of heartbreak morphing into liberation. "That one over there is inspired by a very specific breakup." Logan looked away. Sabrina folded her arms. "Come on, Logan. We should mingle." But he hesitated. "Wait," he said. "Amelia, could we maybe talk later? Just catch up?" "Catch up?" I echoed. I tilted my head, studying him. "You mean now that things are different? Now that I'm not the failure you predicted I'd be?" He flushed, visibly uncomfortable. "That's not what I meant." I stepped a little closer, letting my voice soften, not out of kindness, but for precision. "You left me when I was at my lowest. You said I was naive, that I'd never make anything of myself, that you needed someone who could keep up with your ambitions." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "And that's fine. You chose your path. But don't show up now hoping to play nice just because I finally found mine." Sabrina looked visibly annoyed. "We should go." Logan gave me one last glance, as if searching for the woman he once knew. But she was gone. She had burned to the ground the night he chose someone else, and from those ashes, I had rebuilt myself. I watched them walk away. But that wasn't the end. Later that evening, after the speeches and the applause, after strangers praised my work and gallery owners slipped me their cards, I stepped out onto the rooftop balcony for some air. And there he was again. Logan stood alone, gazing out over the city skyline. "I meant what I said," he murmured without turning around. "I didn't expect to see you tonight. But, seeing you now, I realize I messed up." I didn't respond right away. He turned toward me, his face weary. "I thought I needed someone who could match me financially. Someone with power, connections, and name. But I never felt with her what I felt with you. I thought ambition was about money. But you made me feel like I mattered. Like what I created meant something." I studied him. For a moment, the old ache returned. The part of me that used to long for his validation. The part that cried for nights when he walked away. But that part of me no longer led the conversation. "You wanted someone already established," I said calmly. I was still growing. You didn't want to wait. I was wrong, he whispered. If I could go back. You can't. Silence settled between us, thick with unspoken words. He stepped closer. Is there any chance? No, I said, quietly but firmly. There isn't. His shoulders sank. You're doing well, he said, more to himself than to me. Yes, I agreed. And I'm just getting started. And with that, I turned and walked back inside, the hum of my heels echoing on the marble floor like punctuation marks in a sentence I had long waited to finish. I hadn't planned to see him again. Not like this. Not with the cameras flashing, the room buzzing with admiration for me. But fate has a funny way of staging its grand reveals. And there he was, standing just beyond the marble lobby of the luxury hotel, where I was being honored for my latest design collaboration. His eyes darted nervously as if unsure whether to approach or retreat. I could tell he'd already made the mistake. He'd come too close. My assistant had just handed me a fresh glass of champagne, but suddenly it tasted flat. The room began to blur, not because I was nervous, but because I was bracing myself. This was the moment I never thought I needed. Not revenge. Not closure. Something else. Something bigger. He stepped closer. Hey, wow. You look incredible, he said, voice shaky, unsure. I stared at him for a beat, then let out the faintest smile. Thank you. It's been a long year. A long year indeed. You've really made it, he said, almost in disbelief, eyes scanning the space around us as if searching for proof that it was all real. I tilted my head slightly. Didn't you say I'd never amount to anything? That I was chasing delusions of grandeur? He looked down, embarrassed. I was stupid. I didn't know better. No, I interrupted softly, my tone calm but resolute. You did. You just didn't believe I could be better. The truth hung in the air like humidity before a storm. He tried to laugh it off, but there was a crack in his voice. Listen, I was with her because it seemed practical. She had stability. Resources. Money, I corrected. He nodded slowly, as if the word tasted sour now. Yeah. But it didn't last. She's gone now. Took most of what I had. I didn't flinch. I didn't pity him either. I just let the silence stretch. He needed to feel its weight. You always believed in your dreams, he added, like it was some admiring confession. I didn't. I couldn't even believe in myself. But look at you now. I could have walked away. That would have been the cleanest exit. But there was a part of me that needed to face him, to stand tall in the place where I was once made small. Do you remember the night you left? I asked. He shifted awkwardly. Yeah. You told me I was too emotional, too ambitious, and that my dreams would never translate into reality. You said I was exhausting. He looked ashamed now, his eyes not meeting mine. But do you know what that night did for me? I continued, my voice rising just a notch. It lit a fire I didn't know I had. I stopped trying to prove myself to you and started building for me. Every sleepless night. Every deal I chased. Every sacrifice. It all brought me here. I saw something shift in his expression, a regret so deep it looked like it would drown him. I was wrong, he whispered, and I've paid for it every day since. Good, I said, not out of cruelty but truth. The people around us were starting to notice. The elegant crowd gave us space, but I could feel their subtle curiosity. He didn't belong in this world, not anymore. And he knew it. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black envelope. I wanted to give you this. It's just a letter. I wrote it months ago. I wasn't sure I'd ever get to hand it to you. I took it reluctantly, eyes still locked on his. I wanted to say I'm sorry, he said, voice breaking now. Not because you succeeded, but because I never deserved your love. There it was. The final crack. I tucked the letter into my clutch without opening it. You're right. You didn't. He nodded, a silent surrender. But before he turned to leave, I said, I hope you find whatever version of peace you're looking for. But I've moved on. And not just from you. from needing anyone to tell me I'm worth something. He gave a broken smile, the kind that comes from someone who's finally seen their own shadow. You really are living the dream. No, I corrected once more. I'm building it. Every day. With or without permission. As he walked away, shoulders sunken, I turned back to the event. Cameras flashed again, champagne flowed, and the music swelled. But something had shifted inside me. I hadn't needed to confront him for revenge. I'd needed to confront my past, to see it eye to eye, and realize that it no longer held me hostage. He had left me for someone richer. And now, here I stood, not just rich in success, but in strength, in self-worth, and in the kind of peace that no betrayal could ever buy. And as the doors closed behind him, I whispered to myself the words I once only dreamed of saying. Thank you for leaving. The weeks after our confrontation passed like scenes from a life I never thought would be mine. I wasn't crying myself to sleep anymore or scrolling through old photos trying to make sense of the choices he made.
No.
Now, I was waking up in my glass-walled apartment, the city skyline stretching before me like a promise fulfilled. My mornings smelled of fresh espresso and accomplishment. But even with all the light flooding in, there were shadows I hadn't quite shaken. Because even in this dream-turned reality, there's a strange emptiness when the person you once loved becomes a stranger, and the love you gave them turns into something darker. Pity. One afternoon, I was reviewing proposals for a luxury brand collaboration when I received a message that stopped me cold. I miss you. No subject. No context. Just 3 words. It was from him. My stomach didn't flip the way it used to. I didn't feel that warm, desperate ache. I just felt still. For a moment, I stared at the screen, my perfectly manicured finger hovering over the reply button, before clicking away. Let him miss me. Let him live with the weight of everything he gave up. Let him lie next to her in her king-sized, custom-ordered, cold-as-ice bed and realize how warm our tiny apartment used to be. As the days passed, more messages followed, each more desperate than the last. At first, I didn't respond. I thought I owed myself that much. But then one day, he showed up. I was at a gallery opening, a charity event for female entrepreneurs. It was the kind of event I used to dream about attending, and now I was not just a guest, I was a sponsor. He walked in like a ghost, out of place in a sea of success and poise. His suit was expensive, but his posture was uncertain. He scanned the crowd until he saw me. I didn't flinch. I didn't run. I turned, met his gaze, and held it.
Calm.
Controlled. Hi, he said, voice hesitant. You look incredible. I offered him a faint smile. I know. He laughed awkwardly. I've been trying to reach you. I noticed, I replied, sipping my champagne. There was silence between us, thick and buzzing. Finally, he broke it. Things with her, they weren't what I thought. Of course they weren't. She had money, but she had no soul. He left love for lifestyle and found himself surrounded by everything but warmth. She doesn't see me, he admitted. Not the way you did. I tilted my head, feigning thoughtfulness. That's the thing about vision. You only miss it when you realize you were the blind one. He looked away, ashamed. I was stupid. You were, I agreed and watched him flinch. Then he reached for something in his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. Don't, I warned softly, already knowing. He opened it anyway. A diamond ring. Massive. Glaring. I want to make things right. We can start over. I'll leave her. I blinked slowly. You don't get to unburn bridges, Aaron. I know I don't deserve you, he whispered, but I've never stopped loving you. I felt something then. Not longing. Not anger. Just closure. That night, I sat on my balcony, staring out at the city. The wind tangled through my hair, carrying no trace of him anymore. He was just noise I'd learned to tune out. I thought about how far I'd come. How he told me I'd never be anything more than ordinary. How he smirked when I talked about my dreams. How he rolled his eyes at my vision boards and Pinterest goals. But here I was, living it. He left me thinking he was trading up. But he didn't know that I was still becoming. And now, I had become everything he could never deserve. A few weeks later, I heard he moved out of her house. Rumors whispered of bankruptcy, of secrets spilled in courtrooms, of reputations shredded under designer heels. None of it surprised me. One of our mutual friends texted me a photo, him sitting alone at a cafe, eyes hollow, wearing the same suit from that gallery night. Maybe it was all he had left. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I booked a flight to Santorini. My business was launching its European expansion, and I was scheduled to speak at a global summit. I looked down at my boarding pass, smiled, and whispered to myself, "This life? I built it from the ruins he left me in." On my second night in Greece, I stood by a cliffside villa, the moon painting the sea in silver. A woman beside me clinked her wine glass against mine. "You seem at peace," she said. I nodded. "Because I am." "What changed?" she asked. I turned to her, the wind sweeping strands of hair across my cheek. He thought I'd fall apart without him, but I didn't. I flourished. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger, it's elevation. As I packed my things the next morning, I received a message. Unknown number. A photo. It was of my old apartment, the one Aaron and I shared. Empty. Lights off. Windows cracked. Beneath it. Funny how the past has a way of haunting us. No name. No explanation. I stared at it for a long time, heart thudding. Was it him? Was he watching? Had he come back? I deleted the message, shut off my phone, and whispered into the morning sun. Let the ghosts watch me rise.